All right, Steve, we ready? Yes. All right. Afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year. Thanks for braving the cold to get down here today. Some of you didn't have to go to that far, though. I think it's, we're actually up to 16 degrees, so it actually feels warm out. Let's get straight to it. In terms of crime reduction in New York City, 2017 will go down in history as the safest year we've seen in nearly 7 decades. That span covers 3 generations of New Yorkers, some of whom believe that more than 2,000 murders a year was not only a price of doing business in New York City, but it might be normal, and that nothing could be done about it. But there were other people who didn't believe that to be the case, who refused to accept that life in our city couldn't change for the better. Chief among these idealists were the men and women of the NYPD. But we were realists, too. We knew that reversing the decades-long trend of rising crime and disorder would take time. We knew that it wouldn't happen on its own. What we learned is that reclaiming our neighborhoods required that coordinated efforts of the entire police department, along with the full and willing partnership of all the people we serve. New Yorkers are now understanding that public safety is truly a shared responsibility. And together, we're proving year after year that New York is not the violent nightmare that we once read about in the press, watched on TV, and saw in the movies. It's our home, and we're willing to fight for it. Back then, we knew it wouldn't be easy, but no cop ever took this job because it was easy. Cops took this job to make a difference, to do good, and 2017 was further proof that they certainly do that every single day. Mayor de Blasio is going to speak after me. Then you'll hear from the new Speaker of the City Council, Corey Johnson. Congratulations, Corey. And of course, Dermot Shea will then get into the details of the crime numbers. There's a lot to cover, but one thing you need to remember about all of the info you'll see in here today is this: none of this happened by accident. I'd call it incredible were it not for the very credible reasons why it's all happening. For one, it's the hardworking NYPD police officers on the street right now, and the thousands more who came before them over the past few decades. It's also because of committed community residents in every borough and on every block. Neighborhood policing is a game changer. It's established in 56 of our 77 precincts as of this month, and in all 9 of our Housing Bureau Police Service areas. We're essentially restoring the role of patrol cop to problem solver. These officers are connecting in local neighborhoods in ways they've never have before, and are encouraging residents to share the responsibilities of maintaining the peace and protecting their streets and blocks. Information is flowing from neighborhood residents to the sector teams, to the precinct detectives, and when necessary, to specialty squads like gang and narcotics. These relationships are allowing us to tailor our crime reduction and prevention strategies to individual neighborhoods, which makes all the difference. It's also enhanced training, upgraded equipment, and cutting-edge technology that enables the best cops in the nation to constantly improve. It's our focus on the real drivers of crime in our city, and our unified, coordinated efforts to combat that very small segment of the population responsible for most of the violence. Again, nothing we do we do alone. This method of precision policing is carried out seamlessly in conjunction with our law enforcement partners, especially in the FBI, the DEA, the state police, the U.S. Marshal Service, and the ATF. Together, we're building stronger cases than ever before against the individuals and groups who are driving crime. And our close collaborations with the city's 5 district attorneys and the U.S. Attorney's offices from the southern and eastern districts enable us to pre-indict the criminals we're targeting and to ultimately send them away with meaningful prison sentences. These same partners are the NYPD's critically important allies in countering the ever-changing and perpetual threat of terrorist attacks in the city that remains the nation's principal target. Most importantly, it's our collective understanding that public safety is the foundation for everything else in New York City. We're proving that when the public and police work side by side, we can make positive, lasting change in our society. That change begins when people are safe, and it's sustained when they feel safe too. Of course, this doesn't mean that we have time to sit back and rest, because every success we had in 2017 is now in the past. Because the calendar turns over, we must keep making our way forward together. We welcome the challenge of 2018. We know that no matter how well we're doing, we can always do better. We must do better. That's our obligation. As long as there are victims, there can be no victory lap. So heading into this new year, we'll never let up. And our goal, as always, is to set the standard for effective, efficient policing in this country again and again. That's what this is all about, fighting crime and keeping people safe. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Commissioner, congratulations to you, to all the leadership of the NYPD here at the dais. And I want to just thank everyone who was a part of this stunning success. Special thank you to Eric Cumberbatch, the Executive Director of the Office to Prevent Gun Violence in the Mayor's Office, and to your good colleagues in this work from the Cure Violence Movement, the Crisis Management System. Erica, thank you, and all your colleagues for all you have achieved this year with us as well. Special thank you as well to the Chair of the Public Safety Committee in the City Council, Vanessa Gibson. Thanks for your great partnership. What the NYPD has done is nothing short of stunning. It's been done better than ever before. This work of the NYPD is literally at the high point in the history of this department, and the close working relationship with the community is at the high point. The partnership with the community has made all the difference. Commissioner ONeill and I were out in the 7-5 precinct earlier in the week and had wonderful conversations with the officers there. They've achieved amazing things. A precinct that was once one of our most violent now had an extraordinarily good year with major reductions in shootings and homicides. One of the stories that was so important to me was hearing from the neighborhood coordination officers, talking to them about what their work meant in the community, what it meant to them as officers. And I asked each one to give me examples of crimes that were stopped or crimes that were solved because of closer coordination, communication with the community. It was amazing how they started rattling them off. The calls that came in to their cell phone or the emails that came in from community residents who had gotten to know them, told them about drug location where drug sales were going on that the police were able to stop, told them about weapons, illegal weapons that the police were able to seize, told them about someone they suspected was part of a robbery pattern who turned out to be the perpetrator. This is priceless for our officers to have that kind of support and that kind of communication. So something very powerful is happening because of the neighborhood policing model. And meanwhile, other great efforts that are happening separate, respectfully different, like the Cure Violence movement, that play another crucial role. All of this is happening simultaneously, and this is a new day in New York City, a different reality, and it's working. The fact is, in 2017, the safest big city in America had its safest year in modern history. And let's put in perspective what this means. The last time we were this safe was the 1950s. The last time we had this few murders was 1951. In 1951, the Dodgers were playing at Ebbets Field. If you wanted to go to Ebbets Field on the subway, it cost you a dime to take the subway. These are the kinds of things we used to hear from our parents and grandparents, but they put in perspective how far back you have to go to get to this level of safety. For years and years, I heard these conversations going way back to when I served as a staffer in City Hall in the early 90s. No one believed it was possible to get under 300 murders. I've been in many a room where people said that's a beautiful goal, but one we'll never reach. But these leaders and all the men and women of the NYPD reached the goal that many had thought was impossible. Under 300 murders in a city of 8.5 million people, biggest population we've ever had in our history, 365 days in a year. They have done what many thought was impossible. That's just one piece of the puzzle. Under 800 shootings is extraordinary. The fact that the number of shootings has gone down so rapidly is its own story. I know you'll hear more from Dermot Shea. Under 100,000 total major crimes. Another huge milestone that had been hoped for years, but often seemed unreachable. All of this happened in 2017. Look, another way to think about this, compared to the early 90s, 2,000 fewer murders per year. Put that in human terms, what that means for the families who haven't lost a loved one. 2,000 fewer per year. That's the level we're at now. We've got more to do always, but we have now a model that we know works and can go farther. And that's the exciting part. This model will only get stronger. Neighborhood policing will get stronger. Close working relationship with the community will get stronger. the training, the technology will get better. We will go farther. And all this has been achieved by changing and making a big turn away from some of the mistakes of the past. We know the overuse of stop, question, and frisk was holding us back. We now have a 93% reduction, and that has been accompanied by the lowest crime we've ever had. I think that's proof positive that we used to be making a mistake in this city. We stopped making that mistake. We made ourselves safer. Fewer arrests. There's another huge story, and it's an important example to the nation. 30,000 fewer arrests than in 2016, and substantially lower crime at the same time, particularly huge increases in the most violent crime. That speaks volumes. Compared to 2013, so you compare 2017 to 2013, just 4 years earlier, 100,000 fewer arrests. You compare the year 2013 to year 2017, but again, with remarkable improvement in reducing crime. It's all about neighborhood policing. It's all about precision policing. And it is about giving our officers the chance to do what they do best. Another thing that struck me at the 7-5 precinct was officers talking about the freedom they had now to build relationships with the community, to use their training, to go out and figure out the solutions. And they talked about what the technology allowed them to do, to come up with specific solutions to problems they were facing in their own communities. The empowerment of our officers to take their professional training and use it is another big piece of this story. So look, we understand, as much as we are so proud of this progress, we know we have huge challenges. We know we are the #1 terror target in this nation, and we know the threat of terrorism continues to get more complex. We have certainly felt that pain here, and we're going to continue to innovate while driving down crime, continue to innovate ways of protecting the people of this city from terror. And we look back on this year, 2017, we look back at the victories, we also look back at the moments that leave us very sad and cause us to mourn the loss of Detective Miosotis Familia, and obviously the loss of one of the greatest heroes in NYPD history, Detective Stephen McDonald. These are people we will never forget, and they'll inspire us to go farther all the time. So I couldn't be happier. As we close 2017, we look to 2018, could not be happier with the work of this leadership team and the men and women of the NYPD. Couldn't be more appreciative to our community partners. Something very important is happening here in this city, and we're going to go a lot farther with it in 2018. Let me just say a few words in Spanish. Nuestra ciudad vive un momento extraordinario. El año pasado fue el más seguro en los registros modernos de la policía. Este logro es posible porque la relación entre la policía y la comunidad nunca ha sido mejor. Además, sabemos que el NYPD nunca deja de trabajar para superar sus logros en la ciudad grande más segura del país. With that, it is my great pleasure to turn and first once again congratulate him as he takes on the role of Speaker of the City Council and say to Corey Johnson, I look forward to 4 great years of partnership. I know we have worked really well together on a number of issues before. Now we're going to be working together on everything. But I really appreciate you joining us here today as we celebrate 2017 and we look ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, Speaker Corey Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon. I want to thank Mayor de Blasio and Commissioner ONeill for having this press conference today. First, I want to thank the selfless and courageous women and men of the New York City Police Department who put their lives on the line every single day to protect our great city. We are stronger and safer because of all of you, and I want to give a special thanks to Police Commissioner Jimmy ONeill for his great leadership of this department. I still sometimes almost call him Chief because he and I worked so well together before he was elevated by the mayor. I also want to acknowledge my dear friend and colleague, the chair of the Public Safety Committee on the City Council, Vanessa Gibson, who the leadership of the police department know because of her very thoughtful, responsible leadership of the Public Safety Committee in the council. She's done an incredible job over the last 4 years, and I'm really proud of her and proud to continue to work with her on these issues. Today's statistics once again prove that New York City is the safest it has ever been. The progress our city has made is truly remarkable. I mean, stunning, as the mayor said. When he was rattling the numbers off, I kept saying out loud, wow, because it's hard to even comprehend the progress that we've seen. With tactics like neighborhood policing and the addition of more police officers, the NYPD's practices are clearly working across the board. The New York City Council will continue to be a proud partner with the NYPD and the de Blasio administration. The council has historically provided more funding for additional officers, as you saw a few years ago with former Speaker Mark Viverito and Public Safety Chair Vanessa Gibson, and the leadership of the council pushing for more than 1,000 new officers and working with Mayor de Blasio and his administration through that budget process to bring those officers on board, as well as securing more resources through negotiations like bullet-resistant vests. As the newly elected Speaker of the New York City Council, I look forward to building on our support for our city's finest and partnering with Mayor de Blasio and Commissioner ONeill. I am eager to work with the mayor and the commissioner to ensure that the city of New York continues to be the safest big city in the world. Again, I want to thank the NYPD and their brave force for everything they do. And I want to just end by, it's not worth beating anyone over the head with it, but the numbers are remarkable and stunning. The mayor laid it out, the police commissioner laid it out. You're going to hear from Dermot about the breakdown of the numbers as well. This is remarkable in all ways. And I am really proud of the mayor. I think it's one of his biggest accomplishments over the last 4 years in keeping crime historically low while having less people enter the criminal justice system, and at the same time stopping policies that were divisive for the city of New York and were pitting police against community and community against police. This is such a huge turnaround, and the police force and its leadership and the mayor and the city council, my colleagues who pushed for some of these measures before I was elected to the council, Councilmember Lander and Councilmember Williams took a role in the Community Safety Act, and there has been more done under Chair Gibson's leadership in the Public Safety Committee the last 4 years. I look forward to building on these successes and ensuring that the council has a loud voice and partnership when it comes to supporting the NYPD and keeping crime low in New York City. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Dermot?
Good afternoon, everyone. So this year's end-of-year crime statistics are probably the worst-kept secret in New York City history. I think they've been well talked about and written about already. So I'll start with a few slides and take you back just to understand where we came from. In December of 2015, I was getting ready for an all-in conference that everyone up here on the PD side attended in our new police academy at the time, College Point, Queens. And the slide on the left, I just started it with a simple slide from Jack Maple, an inspirational slide. And then when I was putting the PowerPoint together, I said, draft copy, where do we want to be? Under 100,000 crimes, under 300 murders, and under 1,000 shootings. And then I said, this could go bad. Do I really want to do this? And I can remember discussions at the time, we're going to do it. And there's that slide, and here you are now, 2 years later, and we did it. I'll begin with that for a reason. I could not be more proud of the work of the uniformed men and women of this department, uniform and civilian, of what they have accomplished this year. And these are not numbers. These are numbers on the PowerPoint. These are the real important numbers are the numbers that are not up there, the victims that didn't have to be traumatized by any individual across the city. Because as I go through these numbers, you're going to hear that we did not leave anyone out, every borough of New York City down. The next inevitable question that I'm going to get is, can it go lower? So I'll answer that right up front. I believe we can go lower. I believe we can go lower. We can do better, crime can be pushed further down. It's going to take a lot of cooperation, and I think we're going to get it. Some of the highlights for New York City in 2017. It's our fourth consecutive year of index crime going down. Preliminary numbers, and they will change slightly, this year has New York City recording 5,500, roughly, fewer complaints than last year. Again, fourth straight year. Every borough of New York City saw a crime decline. When you talk index crime, 6 of the 7 index crime categories in New York City showed a decrease. 1, rape, showed an increase. That raw number was an increase of 4 rapes versus this year, and I think I have a slide of the last 7 years of rapes in New York City. And that's something that we are going to continue. We will not rest until we push that further down also. But that raw number for rapes was 1,446 this year. Last year it was 1,442. And you can see there the last 7 years. It is a stubborn crime, and we have work to do still on that front. In addition to the lowest murders, overall index crime, and shootings, New York City also recorded in 2017 the lowest number of robberies, burglaries, and stolen vehicles that New York City has seen in the CompStat era. Housing crime, down 8%, and that's citywide. Housing homicides, I didn't forget you, Jimmy Secreto, down 8% this year. Last year, we recorded in New York City the lowest number of shootings occurring in housing that we had ever seen since we recorded those statistics. It was beaten again this year by the men and women of the Housing Bureau. Housing shootings down 18% this year, 37 fewer victims, so that's great news. Transit crime was up this year in New York City, up 0.5%. It comes to 12 crimes over the course of the year citywide. Couple things to point out. Grand larcenies, we were plus 49 in Brooklyn. And grand larcenies, we were plus 31 in the Bronx. So that more than compensated for the overall citywide increase, and that's something that we're going to continue to work at to push further down. The average number of crimes system-wide continues to be around 6 crimes, and that is consistent. Domestic crime in New York City was down this year, more positive news. Down 6% overall domestic crime. And domestic violence murders, down 22%. 49 recorded, which is 49 too many, but down from 63 last year, a 22% drop. The lowest number of domestic murders by gunfire, less than 10 that we have ever seen. So fantastic news. So what's next? The challenges ahead are the same challenges I literally could cut and paste what I'm saying today from 2-3 years ago. Recidivism, gangs, and illegal firearms continues to be the focus of what we are dealing with, and it's going to continue to be the focus as we move forward into 2018. And we're not going to do it alone. We're going to do it with who we've been working with for the last 4 years to get where we are today. Many partners, some of whom are here today, state, city, and federal partners, community groups, neighborhood policing, all coming together. We are going to go lower. How have we done it? We've been focused, we've been efficient, and again, we've done it with our partners. I'll finish with some of the arrests the mayor alluded to. We've recorded a little over 286,000 arrests, which is a staggering number until you look at what we've done in the past. And remember, this is a city of 8.5 million. There's a lot going on. We are down from 4 years ago, 27% in arrests made. 4 years ago, it was 393,000, almost 394,000 at the end of 2013. When you look at from 7 years ago, which was the peak in New York City in arrests, we are down 32%. It's 136,000 fewer arrests from the end of 2010 to the end of 2017. 136,000 fewer arrests, more efficient. Comes out to nearly 400 fewer arrests per day by the New York City Police Department at a time when we're going to push crime further down. And how are we doing it? It's the opposite sides. The police commissioner mentioned we are going to focus and we're going to get strong sentences. We are on those that are committing violent crime over and over, carrying guns, arrested as part of patterns. We're also at the same time going to arrest fewer people, as you have seen. But when we arrest somebody, we are going to collect evidence, we are going to present it to the grand jury, we're going to get it with Bob Boyce's detectives to the prosecutors to even have a greater and greater impact. That's it.
Okay, that's it. All right, any questions as it regards to crime? Crime presentation in the first row?
I want to talk about technology, things that are newer than CompStat. You know, CompStat, I don't know if you agree with it, Brandon, in the sense that is 5 to 15% in terms of impact on crime, decrease in crime rates. How has newer stuff like, which are piloting, ShotSpotter, I think, and HunchLab, are they working out, are they contributing to this? Are you looking at how they're being used in other cities? I think Chicago is big.
I am aware of HunchLab, but that's not focused into anything that we have done here in terms of what we have done. ShotSpotter, different story. We have had, as you know, ShotSpotter deployed for several years now, and it's gone under several versions where it has expanded. It's tremendously helpful in terms of intelligence. Where are shootings happening? Where are shots fired happening? Where are they happening where we may not have been aware of before? It helps Bob Boyce's detectives respond closer, quicker, exactly where an incident happened. With that information, they're going to get video. They're going to get it quicker before video potentially disappears. ShotSpotter is one piece of many pieces of what we have been doing over the last 4 years. I would categorize it in a broader category of technology that has increased over the last 4 years. I could go on and on, where the NYPD was 5 years ago. So a lot of credit to Jesse Tisch, to the smartphones that we have, to the data that's collected, analyzed, disseminated, to the funding of 100 crime analysts that are even hopefully going to push crime further down. So ShotSpotter is one piece of the overall story, very valuable in terms of anytime we collect more evidence, it gives us a bigger picture of what's going on. It helps us to link cases quicker. It helps us to deploy faster and deploy smarter. So when we have to make critical decisions about one case can be done in a particular area, which case is the more valuable case? How many shootings, for example, can we attribute to one violent gang in whatever borough? And that intel is combined with raw intelligence, human intel that John Miller's FIOs provide to really provide a sharp focus. HunchLab, listen, in the topic of predictive policing, the NYPD is always trying to get smarter, but HunchLab is not used currently in deployment of resources by the NYPD on a day-to-day basis.
And if you just take a look at the way CompStat is run, and I know there's a couple of organizations here that have done stories about it, this is what it's all about. It's about accountability and building leadership for the future. And if you look at the level of granularity, where we look at the crimes, where we look at the enforcement, I think that's truly helping us push the crime numbers down too. But you also have to remember the technology is great. AVL, ShotSpotter, the mobile phones that the police officers have. But I think the best thing going for us is the ability for our police officers to establish and have relationships with the people in this great city. That's really helping us push these numbers down. Rocco?
For the Commissioner, for the Chief, the department has talked a lot about how it's training officers. The department has talked a lot about how it's training officers to deal better with the mentally ill. Can you talk a little bit about what the department can do in terms of dealing with those who commit crimes, for instance, being on medication? Incident 2 days ago in the subway system where an 18-year-old man shoved someone to his death. He was off his medication. What if anything, can the department do as far as dealing with mental health experts to prevent things like that, if at all?
Yeah, I think the key is we have to, when possible, intercede in that before it becomes something like that. So there's a tremendous amount of resources that are currently being put in throughout the department. We've done a lot over the last few years in particular in partnering up our police officers and detectives on the street with crisis outreach teams throughout the city to try to identify people at need. It's a very difficult proposition, Rocco, as you may well know. But people come across our paths in a variety of ways. Oftentimes, not in crime situations, either as a perpetrator or a victim. Sometimes it's on aided cases. Sometimes it's Terry Monahan's officers just walking the beat throughout a particular neighborhood. When we encounter people, we have done a significant amount of work in the last couple years, increasing the training throughout the department to identify people in special needs, and then work with partners throughout the city and try to get them the help that they need. But it is an ongoing problem that we continue to see from time to time.
Hey, Rocco, as the Daily News noted today, we are increasingly using Kendra's law, taking the opportunity to ensure there is follow-up action in these cases. But as Dermot said, the ideal situation is when we can see a situation in advance and stop further problems from happening. Our NYC Safe initiative focuses on that, literally person by person, identifying individuals who we need to focus on and make sure that they are getting treatment or getting some other kind of supervision. That's very complex work, but we have seen some real success with it. We're going to keep deepening that.
Tony?
Commissioner, neighborhood policing is clearly a major strategy going forward. About a year ago, we asked if you were going to be polling the public to get public response about its perception, the public's perception of neighborhood policing. Has that study been done? And if so, when it will be released? If it hasn't been done,
It's not a study. It's an ongoing program. It's still in beta form right now, so we're still collecting data. So it's not finalized yet. And basically, what it'll allow people to do on their smartphones, periodically, a survey will come up about. First, it starts with a question about New York City. Then it'll start with another couple of questions about trust and safety in New York City. We'll be able to do that down to the sector level. It's not perfected yet, so it's not fully in use, but we anticipate that to be fully functional in 2018.
so at some point you will be able to release that data, hopefully.
At some point, we'll talk about it. Yes, Tony. Yes.
Question is really, what do you think is happening, or is anything happening other than what the police are doing? And the reason I ask that is that domestic crime is down by 6%, domestic murders are down by 22%. Is there anything that NYPD does that would suppress those numbers, or is there something else happening in society about violence in general that is producing these lower numbers?
And I speak about this every month where we have these press conferences. It's certainly not everything is, these numbers aren't down just because of the work that the NYPD is doing. Just look who's sitting in the front row here, the violence interrupters, Erica Ford out in Queens and all over the city. That it's got to be everybody participating in this. And I think the work that our NCOs are doing and the steady sector cops have a lot to do with it. But once you build those relationships, I think that's a force multiplier for us. And as far as violence being reduced in society, that's a little bit above my pay grade. But I know what's happening in the NYPD. I know what's happening in the city, and I know what's happening with the way we are working with the communities around the city. And it's all playing a big part in helping us reduce crime.
Explain the domestic numbers, domestic violence.
I think the outreach that we do, and the people that we have, I think we have advocates in each and every precinct now, and the visits, the proactive visits that we do to the people that we see that do have a domestic violence history, and we've expanded that not just with our DV people, our NCOs are doing that work too. So I think continued outreach is important. Community support is a big part of this too.
Yeah, let me just jump on that for a second, Henry. I think this should not be underestimated, this example. For NYPD to be very consistently showing up on the doorstep of families where there's been a domestic violence problem and keep coming back regularly. That is a real change from the past, and that's now a pervasive strategy. I do think that has a big impact. I think the Cure Violence movement, crisis management system, a major factor as well, and something that's grown a lot in recent years, both in size and in impact. You could definitely argue there are other societal trends and policies that could have an impact. I'm a big believer over time, for example, pre-K will prove to have a very helpful impact on reducing how many kids end up being involved with gangs, for example. And there's a lot of studies that show that, but the kids who we've had in pre-K universally, that's only been a few years. We won't see the results for a while. But I am certainly a believer that there's more than one way to reduce crime. But I think when you see this kind of intensive, fast reduction, I think it does come back to neighborhood policing, precision policing, stronger ties to the community allies making a big impact, and different strategies right down to the example of taking something as difficult and painful as domestic violence and treating it as a moment for intensified engagement, not just answer the call and that's it, but constantly coming back. That's a very hands-on, proactive approach that's newer to the NYPD. I think that makes a big impact.
Dean?
Now we're saying these are the lowest numbers since 1951 for a very long time. We were talking about the mid-90s when CompStat started. What numbers are you using? Are those city numbers, federal numbers that you're able to get to 1951 now, as opposed to, let's say, 1994, which we've always heard?
Yep. So the 51 number, that's the NYPD, New York City, reporting to the feds UCR numbers. Remember, the shooting incidents is not something that's reported. So when we talk shooting incidents, that's back to 93, back to the beginning of CompStat, where at the time, Commissioner Bratton, Jack Maple, and others decided this is something that had to be tracked. But when you talk the other crimes, that's UCR numbers.
4 years ago, a lot of us were predicting that if there were fewer arrests, if there were more changes like neighborhood policing, that crime would go up. Well, we were wrong. Why were we wrong?
This is something, again, every month we talk about this. We are focusing, I think Bob Boyce's people have a lot to do with this. Neighborhood policing has a lot to do with it. But we have, there's 36,000 cops in New York City, 16,000 civilians. Sounds like a lot, but there's 8.5 million people. So we needed to refocus those resources on the people involved in the violence and the crime. And of course, we have to be responsive to community complaints in 311. But if you look at what we're doing with medium, short, and long-term investigations, those are the people driving the violence in this city. And I think that's why we have this success. Instead of writing a criminal court summonses to a guy maybe walking home from work with a beer, we're giving our officers the discretion to do whatever, address it, but that doesn't necessarily mean summary enforcement action. So I think giving our police officers the ability to make decisions, to solve problems in conjunction with the community, and targeting our investigative resources on the people involved in the violence and crime, I think that's what's paying off.
And Dave, just to add, there's a very human reality for the NYPD to have a much deeper, more personal relationship with the communities they serve makes a huge difference. And let's face it, in the past, it was too much about numbers and quotas. It was too little about bonding with people in neighborhoods, and it didn't work. The fact is, I didn't understand this till I got into this job, that it's really a few thousand individuals who are driving most of the serious violence. Well, what the NYPD has now done is created 8 million allies in taking on those few thousand bad actors by really, gaining the trust of community residents in every kind of neighborhood. And that's a huge force multiplier.
Solon?
Comes up often when talking about how sustainable crime declines are in big cities in the U.S. is the prevalence of illegal guns in the country. So how can the NYPD, or really any major city, continue these declines with the amount of illegal guns that we're seeing across state lines?
What I would say to that is, and why I say I know the crime can go lower, because I still see improvements that can be made. Bob Boyce, Terry, myself, chairing a CompStat this morning with Brooklyn South, and it was a great opportunity to start the year and tell Steve Powers, thank you for the work that the men and women of Brooklyn provided last year. Brooklyn had a fantastic year in terms of crime reduction. But with that being said, Steve will grab you on the side and tell you that, there's things that we pointed out, that they pointed out, that there's still improvements that can be made. And my personal opinion, I think that We've done a lot. We make mistakes, we can still get better, but there is significant gains still to be made when you look at the entirety of the criminal justice system and how the different pieces intersect. So I have no doubt that we can go lower.
And there's also, there's something out there on the horizon that's looming that we all have to pay attention to, and that's the Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act. We can never stop talking about that. It passed the House, it's in the Senate now, and this just can't be. We are at such low levels of violence, firearms violence in New York City now. Any change might possibly have a huge negative effect on us. So that's something that we're not going to stop talking about. And that's just not New York City. It's a lot of big cities, and we're not telling people in other states what to do with their gun laws. We're just telling people what we need to do in New York City. In the back row.
How does the reduction in violence affect how the department thinks about deploying?
That's actually a great question, because we have these reductions citywide. There are still neighborhoods in the city that we have to focus many of our resources on. We can't look away. Just because crime is down, we can't say, okay, job done. There is still a percentage of the population out there that's involved in violence and crime, and no matter how low these numbers go, we still have to pay attention to what they do every day. So it does have an effect on deployment. There is some room, but not a lot of room. Willie?
Question to the speaker. A couple of things. You work on the announcement from the mayor's office about today's event, so I want to know, were you invited? Did you invite yourself? What brings you here today? And also, you talk about whether you see the council being more involved in policing policy, working with the police department, and what are you going to propose? Do you propose more police officers, and police officers? What are those?
I am so offended I wasn't on the invite today. Now, the mayor and I talked about this more than a week ago. And in our first meeting that we had together after it was either before the new year, after the new year, he had said, we have some amazing numbers, knock on wood. He kept knocking on the table over and over again. And he said, I would love for you to come to the press conference. And I said I would be happy to come, because these issues, the reduction in crime, public safety, are issues that each council member cares about, or issues that affect every neighborhood in the city. And so I am happy to be here today. Again, the council, I think, played a very significant role in increasing the number of police officers. I believe it was 3 budgets ago, in negotiations with the mayor. Speaker Mark Viverito, my predecessor, deserves credit for that. The mayor deserves credit for that, and through the budget process, getting that done. And I think there are many things that were talked about today on why we're seeing historically low numbers, but getting more officers both in precincts for the NCO program, and a chunk of those officers were for the SRG unit, the Strategic Response Group unit, counterterrorism related, in the time that we're living in. So the council played a role in that. I think the council needs to continue to play a role. And I don't think the role at this point is a critical role. And when I mean critical as in against the mayor or against the NYPD. Sure, there'll be times where there needs to be accountability, or we disagree, or where there are incidents. But you see the numbers today. The council's here to support the police force, support the de Blasio administration, to continue to improve and drive crime even lower. One thing that I would like to look at, though I'm not looking to make news here today, and it's a discussion I want to have with the mayor, is I want to ensure that auxiliary police officers get bullet resistance vests as well. The council and the mayor worked on that for the force, and I think auxiliary officers, there was an auxiliary officer killed in my district in Greenwich Village almost a decade ago. That's one thing we can talk about during the budget process. So I look forward to this partnership. I'm really excited and happy to be here with the mayor, with the police commissioner, and with top leadership of the NYPD.
Will you be proposing getting more police officers? And what about right to know? Will that be back before the council?
I feel good about where we ended up on right to know. I was proud to vote for it. I'm really proud of Councilmember Torres and Councilmember Reynoso for their very thoughtful negotiations with the leadership of the NYPD and with the mayor. I think it turned out in a really good way. I haven't sat down with all my colleagues yet to talk about our legislative priorities coming into this next session. Bills need to be introduced, But I feel good about the progress we've made on the right to know so far, and I think it was a really good collaboration between the administration and the council. When it comes to officers, I need to sit down, again, with my colleagues, with the mayor, and with the police commissioner. We added the officers. They're continuing to roll out additional NCO programs across the city. I believe we're in 56 precincts out of 77 and all 9 PSA units. That's a good thing. One of the issues that each precinct would probably tell you is that a lot of the officers spend their times on radio runs because of responding to 911 calls. So the more officers we can get on the street, on the beat, beefing up the NCO program even more, which has been fantastic, I would be supportive of. I don't know enough about the attrition rates. I don't know about retirements. I don't have the numbers. I'm not going to get ahead of the police commissioner or the mayor or my colleagues before we have a very serious conversation about adding additional officers.
Thank you. In light of the Attorney General's recent actions on marijuana enforcement for states that locally legalized it, Mayor, you call that a vendetta. I was wondering what marijuana enforcement looks like in the city in 2017 versus, since 2013.
So this year, I'll give you the broadest category, because I think that's what generally people talk about, the misdemeanor level. Penal Law 22110, we were down less than 1%, but down about 1%, I would say. If you look to where we are now compared to, again, the peak, we can certainly get you those numbers through DCPI, but it's down dramatically.
I have some numbers for you. I go back to 2010. So in 2010, this is total felony misdemeanors and violations. There were 63,367. In 2017, there were 22,655. The biggest decrease being in misdemeanors, 39,000 decrease. Yep. Colleen?
The federal policy is going to have an effect on how on the discretion given to officers when making these low-level arrests or choosing to do the summons. We're talking about pot, I mean.
Yeah, no, I kept up with the conversation. I know what you're talking about. That's something that we have to take a look at, but I don't anticipate that. In the back row?
Last month, you said Chief Boyce added more people to special victims. How many more?
Chief Boyce will talk about that.
Sure. So in 2017, we had 26 investigators to our special victims unit. We have another 10. At the end of every quarter, we go through deployment and see where we're at. We need more people. So at the end of this quarter, at the close of the year, we're going to add 10 more investigators there as well. Now, we've had some attrition issues as well, but that's part of it. So what we've done to our special victims division, we've trained each one of our investigators in what we call FETI training, which is forensic experiential trauma interview. That's for people who have undergone extreme trauma and to get information from them. And that's basically an empathy-based technique, okay? And we've been very successful with it, special victims more than any other my other divisions have. So what else have we done? We have a DNA cold case squad that has gone from 1 in 5 to 1 in 9 now. We've increased that. So when we talk about that, we go back to old cases and see if we have DNA to connect perpetrators to, and we've been very successful in that. They're also catching a lot of the old cases that we've gotten recent complaints on. And we spoke, Dermot spoke about this earlier. We were down significantly in the summer. Now we're a little bit up by 4 complaints this year. So we've seen an uptick in complaints in the fall of 2017. So we'll address that now with more deployment into our squads.
So how many detectives is that total?
So right now we have 259 totally assigned. All right, we're going to add 10 more. So that would be back to 270. Again, it's the largest special victims division in the country. So we'll keep going forward in that direction.
DOI put out a report earlier this week about violence in hotels that are housing homeless families or prostitution, drug problems. And the city says that it's working with NYPD to sort of strengthen its vetting process or how they secure these hotels. Can you speak at all to what, if anything, the police department's going to be doing differently going forward?
Yeah, sure, Grace. Chief Ed Thompson, who's with DHS, will speak to that. Ed?
Good afternoon. So moving forward, we're going to vet every hotel that the Department of Homeless Services goes into. So we'll ensure that they have all the appropriate information before they place families in those environments.
And how will you be vetting those hotels?
We'll vet them the same way that our vice unit does. We'll look at complaints, we'll look at previous arrests, we'll look at existing cases, and we'll ensure that they have all the information to provide the safest environment for any family that's placed in a hotel setting.
Mayor, just to go back to the change in marijuana policy from Jeff Sessions, you tweeted that his vendetta against legalized marijuana, or your account tweeted, his vendetta against legalized marijuana is an attack on minority communities. We know that the war on drugs, we know what the war on drugs does to communities of color. This is a step backward. When you've been asked before about legalizing marijuana, recreational use of marijuana, you said you've been looking to what those states were doing. Do you think that what those states have done is a step forward, or, I mean, have you changed your opinion at all?
This is about,
or formulated?
no, I haven't changed my opinion. Sorry, I haven't changed my opinion. This is about the federal government interfering with the rights of those states to make their own decisions. The people of those states decided this policy. It's not for the federal government to intervene for political reasons, and that's where I think vendetta is the right word. A lot of these states happen to be more progressive states, more democratic states. The federal government has no business telling the people of those states how to live. And so I think that's what's motivating it. My view remains the same. Something I want to study. I don't have a change in my viewpoint, but I want to study those experiences of those states as they move forward.
Rocco? Commissioner, earlier this week, the department acknowledged it is looking at claims by a captain who's alleging that crimes in certain commands have been downgraded. And in that acknowledgement, Chief Montillo said that of roughly 700,000 index crimes, about 2% are found to be misclassified. Do you have a rough sense as to, regarding that 2%, which is about 14,000, what percentage of those are misclassified as a result of not an understanding of the nuances of the law, as opposed
I can get that breakdown for you. Yep. I don't have it with me now.
But just generally speaking, do you think it's more that as opposed to officers willfully downgrading crimes for whatever
And
reason?
if we have an allegation where people are willfully downgrading, of course, we'll fully investigate that. And most of the times when we do these investigations, it's human error.
Rocco, let me just say, the 2% number, I believe is an accurate number, and it's been fairly steady, but that's not to indicate that 2% are downgraded, that some are improperly classified and need to go both directions, if you will. Or it could be an index crime, and it's just a wrong index crime. So like, we strive for excellence, and we deploy based on our data, which I've said, which is why it's so important. But when you look at the 700,000 number, that's not index crimes, that's total complaints. And then when you look at the 2% number, we'd like to be 100% perfect, but I think we all agree, mistakes do happen from time to time.
Commissioner, have you decided who the next chief of department would be? And if so, when are you going to tell us?
You will be told shortly, and the process is not over yet. How do you like that for anticipation?
Is there an acting chief of department right now?
Last time we had the press, we met with the press, we talked about that. Every time, Carlos used to go on vacation, we'd have an acting chief of department. So the answer is yes.
Who would that be, by the way, right now?
It would be Chief Monahan right now.
Okay, any more police questions? Last up, police questions. All right, but I believe that Vinegar, I guess.
Some people will escape now.
Actually.
That's the
Everybody-
cost of escape.
Thank you.
I think I got the better half.
Take care, Corey. Thanks a lot.
You got the Gatorade there.
Terry, if you need me to explain that to you.
Very, very witty. Okay, wait, I have a weather topper. Hold on. Forgot all about it. It is cold, yes. That's my topper. Hold on. Okay. Okay. So let me update you on the weather situation. We continue to have very cold temperatures. With wind chills, we still predict we'll have temperatures as low as -20 in the next few days, especially in the evenings. So I want to caution everyone again, be very careful. If you have to go outside, keep your time outside as limited as possible. We continue street clearing operations with the sanitation department. I think they did a great job yesterday. They did a great job overnight. Excuse me, they will continue their work in the coming days. Alternate side parking is suspended today, and you previously heard that it would be suspended tomorrow. We're now going to lengthen that. We're going to suspend alternate side parking not only tomorrow, but also Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So alternate side parking will be suspended through Wednesday, and I hope that's going to make people's lives easier, but most especially they can leave their cars. So I strongly want to urge people, if you can leave your car, leave it. You don't need to dig it out yet. You certainly want to not dig it out and put the snow in the street because that just makes sanitation's work harder. We are hiring temporary snow laborers. I want to remind everyone that is at a $15 an hour wage. We need snow laborers to help clear out some of the places that the machinery can't reach. The deepest need is in Queens and Staten Island. And if you want to come forward and get paid as a snow laborer, please call 311. Code Blue is in effect. We will make sure that we're constantly sweeping to get people off the street and get them into shelter. Again, if you see anyone that you think is in distress, call 311. If you think it's an emergency, urgent situation, call 911. Anyone who doesn't have heat, I want to keep saying this, please call 311 right away if you don't have heat in your building, so we can get an inspector out, so we can get to work getting the building to repair the situation, or worst case, the city will repair it and charge the building management. A few words in Spanish. En los próximos días hará mucho frío en nuestra ciudad. Las reglas de estacionamiento alterno están suspendidas hasta el jueves. Necesitamos trabajadores temporales para ayudar a limpiar la nieve. Para más información, por favor, llamen al 311. Let me see if there's any questions on the weather or the snow situation up front. Just get those out of the way. If there are anything weather-related. Jillian?
Any storm or cold-related deaths in the city that you're aware of?
Not that I know of, checking PD as well. No, none that we're aware of, thank God. None.
I mean, unless someone else has like a very weathery question on the topic of heat.
Still weather, okay, weather and heat? Okay, go ahead. Close enough.
On the topic of heat, I know we spoke yesterday about conditions in certain NYCHA developments. I noticed today before I walked over here that there were 3 different developments today that were showing on the NYCHA dashboard as being without heat in the entire development. It seems like, as soon as the city perhaps gets one back online, there's another one to worry about. Can you give us sort of an overview of what's happening right now? NYCHA,
Yeah.
I see there's some kind of command center. When did that start, and what's the status?
This is something we've been working on more each year. Each season, I'm in regular touch with NYCHA about the changes that have to be made to address the problem. I think what they've done this year is a step forward to strengthen the command center structure. And obviously, I do want people to be able to see in real time what's happening. I think what you just said is largely true. A development loses heat often for, thank God, just a few hours. We get it back up, but then there's a problem somewhere else. Why? Because the infrastructure of NYCHA is in very tough shape. Yesterday, Woodside Houses in Queens went out, so I went there, went down into the boiler room, which is really quite a scene, and the head of heating maintenance for NYCHA was there with the general manager, Michael Kelly. And he literally described how much they have to fight every day to keep these operations going. The oldest boiler in the NYCHA system is from 1954. They've got a lot from the 60s and 70s. The one at Woodside is long past its official useful life, but they keep it going. It's sheerly a resource issue. This stuff all should have been invested in a long time ago. There was not money. NYCHA has an $18 billion backlog in terms of the needs of its physical plant. So what these hardworking employees do is they are constantly working to keep each boiler going. If there's a breakdown, to fix it as quickly as possible. Sometimes they need to get parts, including parts for boilers that the manufacturer's gone out of business. They have to literally create the parts themselves in some cases. So it's a really tough situation. But the good news is, so what Woodside, major development, was down for a few hours. They got it, back up and running within hours. We have, right now, I've got a number of developments having problems, 5 developments, but all of which are projected to be fixed in the course of the day. And the other thing that made clear, it's not a perfect situation, but the buildings hold heat well. The way they were built, they're older buildings, obviously, they hold heat. So we never want a boiler out, but if it's out for a few hours, generally the temperature won't go down too far, and there's a chance to rebound. But this is going to be every day a struggle, and we're going to do everything we can to support NYCHA, but this has to do with the larger physical reality of NYCHA.
One thing that we heard from tenants who we spoke to yesterday was that they were filing tickets, and that the tickets would get resolved, but that nothing had changed on their end, or they hadn't been contacted by anybody. Have you heard complaints like that?
No, I've certainly heard, I've spoken to a lot of NYCHA residents in the last 4 years, and they certainly want to see repairs happen and happen quickly. I have not heard of tickets being resolved without something being done. I'm certainly happy to look into it. If you'll give my folks some specifics, we'll look into it. But again, on the bigger issue of when there's a heating problem affecting a whole building or a whole development, I'm confident that the system now identifies that problem quickly and throws everything we got at it. And sometimes we also need help from the utilities. I want to make that clear. Sometimes it is a utility problem. We're trying to make sure the coordination is very strong to get the utilities to do their piece of the equation too. On the storm or the weather, go ahead.
Any concern about the train system? Any advice for commuters? People are wondering if the trains are going to break. I mean, these are temperatures that we haven't seen since, I think, 22 years.
I mean, from everything I've heard, the train should be okay. We have not heard of problems. They went through, I give the MTA a lot of credit, they went through yesterday very well. So no, we are not seeing that problem so far. I think it's a classic situation. People should just try and stay as close to home as they can. Obviously, some people have to move around. But so far, mass transit's been working very well. Okay, on the storm weather, just one more check on anything there. Go ahead.
Are you familiar with the current demand for shelter, safe haven beds in particular?
Say that again?
Shelter from people who are living on the street. I think there's about 1,100 safe haven beds in the city right now. Do you know where demand is?
I'd have to get you the exact number. Safe havens, we've been expanding, as you saw from the announcement a few days ago. Demand has been very high. I mean, look, right now we're almost up to 1,000 people that we've gotten to come off the street over the last year and a half who have not gone back to the street, which is a really extraordinary step, and we got to do a lot more of that. Safe havens have been a big part of that. Also, the bigger involvement of the NYPD in shelter security has definitely had a major impact. We're getting some real indicators that folks who are street homeless feel that the shelters are safer, and the NYPD's consistent presence in shelter security for the first time ever is making a difference. But my understanding is we're going to want to keep expanding the safe havens because we obviously want to keep reducing that street homeless population. Yeah.
On night, yesterday Michael Kelly was at your news conference. You mentioned going to the site at Woodside with him yesterday. Where is the chairwoman? Is she in town and involved in response?
She and I have been emailing back and forth every day. She's been deeply involved, as always, on something that's purely operational like this. Obviously, the general manager is the go-to, but she's been deeply involved in everything we've been doing. I don't personally know that, but I've been in constant touch with her the last few days. Okay, any other questions, weather-related or storm? Just need one more call on weather or storm-related. Yes?
The
two jails on Rikers that had heating issues, and how many inmates were affected, and what was the jail where folks had to be moved elsewhere, and where were they moved?
Could you do something different going forward, please? Sure. Thank you. Just do one at a time, because I promise you I will take them all, because I can't even remember those 4 questions. Okay. There are 10 buildings that house inmates, 2 of which are where we've had the heat problems, 1 of which is the one that we announced the closure of, and I believe that will be by June, if I'm remembering correctly. That's point 1. What else did you ask?
Well, no, the question is about the heat. You said this morning on Brian Leather that there were 2 facilities where there were issues of lack of heat. What were those 2 facilities?
I'll get you the names. Our folks will get you the names. We'll get you that. Yeah. You're welcome. Okay. Yes.
To go back to NYCHA, obviously this cold has been forecast for quite a while, and
Yeah.
I'm sure that people at NYCHA have known about these issues with the boilers. Do you know if anything was done in advance of this weather to try to shore them up, or can you give us some sense of those?
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I had an amazing experience talking to the head of heating. It was just like being at the front in a war. I mean, this is really tough. They've got a physical plant that is not what it should be, and everyone knows it. So what they do is, once they get past March and April, they refit all the boilers throughout the next 6 months to 8 months. That's what they do in between. Is anything, some are getting replaced, thank God, as we do have some resources. A lot need, new parts or need maintenance of some type. So that's an ongoing effort to prepare for the next cold weather season. So it's very systematic. There's additional mobile boilers at developments that have had consistent problems with their existing physical plant. Typically, there's redundancy with the mobile boilers. So if you need 1, they put in 2. If you need 2, they put in 3. So there's a backup. So a lot of really good planning goes into it. The problem is simply the equipment is constantly strained, largely due to age and not having gotten the kind of investment it deserved. So they basically know on any given day something's going to have a problem. They pre-position a lot of personnel to deal with things, to monitor it constantly, to be able to move. They've got different response teams that can be there very rapidly if something goes wrong. But, it's a tough situation. Over time, look, the next generation NYCHA plan, the good news about that is it does slowly but surely over years and years allow us to start catching up on capital spending for NYCHA. That, in some cases, will help us solve problems more foundationally. But honestly, for quite a while, it's going to be this constant race against time to try and either stop a problem, stop a boiler from going down, or trying to get it back in action in a course of hours. Last call on weather or storm. Okay, other topics. Yes.
The City Council Speaker, Corey Johnson, has said that he wants to lead a more independent City Council, and he's talked about wanting to create some sort of investigative arm for the body that would have subpoena power, maybe be staffed by former prosecutors, investigators to provide oversight of the city. And I'm wondering what you think of the idea, and if you think something like that would be helpful to the City Council in being a check on city government.
Look, first of all, I'm looking forward to a lot of positive and good faith conversations with the Speaker and the Council on a whole host of matters. So far, Speaker Johnson and I have had very good working relationship for the last 4 years and in this transitional period, so I'm confident that that will continue. I was a city council member. I was chair of one of the committees with one of the biggest oversight portfolios. I found that the tools I had were very, very substantial. I think the council has a lot that it can bring to bear right now. But if there's other things they're looking to do, we look forward to talking it through with them. Other questions? Yes.
Mayor, this is about your legislative agenda in Albany. What are your top priorities, and how focused is the lobbying effort on 50A?
It's going to be very focused. I think this is the year I'd love to see 50A resolved once and for all. I've been honest that I will not be shocked if the thing that finally gets us there is a change in the state Senate, but I think this is a powerful year to go and try and see if we can have a breakthrough. There's a lot of people in this state who think it's the right thing to do to have that greater transparency, so we'll be working for it. Look, anything you can get done in the budget is always ideal, but some things will fit in the budget, some things won't, and we'll go into legislative session. We'll be fighting for the reform of 50A. We'll be fighting for electoral law reform, speed cameras, design build. You know, we'd like to see all of the previous commitments made on affordable housing, supportive housing, support for NYCHA. We'd like to see all of that actually move, and we haven't honestly seen much. I want to see an increase in education aid. You know, there's a lot of things that are on the agenda. Okay, yes.
Do you have any idea who will serve as director of the MWB program after Richard Weary leaves? And would you consider a full-time chief diversity officer this time around?
I think Richard has done an extraordinary job putting our MWBE effort into a very aggressive posture. We finally got real progress in Albany on the legislative front. That's going to help us speed that up. There's more we'd like going forward from Albany, but we got real progress. I think Janelle Doris is doing an outstanding job as our director. As we finalize the organizational chart, will determine who will be the ultimate person responsible for the MWB effort. I do not foresee a change in the basic structure because I think it's working. Going, let's see, anybody else? All right, going once, going twice, oh, that was really late call. What do you think, Eric? That was late. Last one, go ahead.
Thank you so much. One for Chief ONeill. Do you support a change in 58?
Since I think Commissioner Bratton and I, that's okay, no problem. Sandy, correct you. I do. I believe that additional transparency is necessary to continue to build trust with all 8.5 million New Yorkers, and I've said this previously, and my statement's been consistent.
Thanks, everyone.